Welcome to Celebrating Act 2. Celebrating Act 2 is the user manual for the second half of your life.
Hi, I'm Debbie Weiss, and I'm here to help you navigate the cesspool that is middle-age dating. And today I want to talk about a topic that you might not agree on. But here we go. When I was dating, and it took me a while before I met my right person, the best advice I came up with was do not settle. Don't settle for what you don't want. Even if it doesn't seem to be out there, you can find it, but you have to keep looking. And this really came to mind about 4 years ago. I was sitting with 3 girlfriends. We were all in our mid-50s, and all of us were dating loser boyfriends. These guys, most of them were cheap. Several of them were quite critical. They were always telling us what's wrong, while seeming to think that they were just real catches, which they weren't. They weren't terribly nice to us, and yet we hadn't really met anybody better. So we were all in these relationships that had been going on 6 months to a year, thinking that that's all there was. And I have so many other friends I know who have simply given up on middle-aged men. They've said, well, I've raised my children, I'm finished, or there isn't somebody good out there. And at the end of my bad relationship, I read a book called The Rules. Now, a lot of people don't like The Rules. The Rules are a 1995 self-help book directed at women, and the subtitle for the book is Time-Tested Secrets for Capturing the Heart of Mr. Right. So it does sound like you're trying to get your MRS, get married, and it does sound archaic. But I feel like The Rules have something to offer. When The Rules came out in 1995, I was 32. I was married then to my high school sweetheart. I was practicing law, and I really thought, well, why wouldn't you just be yourself? The more open you are, the more you'll have love. But again, I had married my high school sweetheart, been with precisely one man, and was woefully ignorant. Because after I'd been dating about 5 years and I read The Rules, they started to make sense to me. And part of that is because dating had changed since I was in high school. When I was in high school in, dating myself here, the late 70s, the boy called, he asked you on a date in advance. He planned something that you would both enjoy, assuming he was a nice boy, and I was a nerd, so I only dated nice boys. It would be something outside. It wasn't like, come to my house and watch movies. That wasn't appropriate. And the boy would make sure that you had a pleasant time and that you got home safe. And then, he would call again for a date and you'd go from there. Girls could do this in theory, but they didn't in my suburban high school in the late 70s. So I was kind of shocked when I started dating in about 2014, and all that was gone. People didn't ask me out. It was more like these demands. I think in a week I'll be home on a Friday night at my local bar. I'll give you a call if you could, maybe you could stop by. People couldn't plan things in advance. They couldn't figure out an hour for coffee. I still don't understand why somebody contacts you for a date just to tell you they're so busy they don't have time to date. There's nothing left. Maybe sexting, which is again a relatively new phenomenon. I got a lot of cancellations. I got general rudeness. Sometimes a guy would agree to a date, but say, I'll call you, around the time I'm available. And none of this was working for me. The other issue was, I think, with the hookup culture, people thought that they could just kind of meet up for something easy and casual. And that wasn't really what I'd signed on for. And for some reason, maybe because I was older, several guys kept sending me pictures of themselves from the rear, their jeans kind of down their butt. I didn't understand the ass pictures, and ass first is no way to start a relationship either. And all this convinced me that there is a war going on between the sexes, and it was based on how much a woman will put up with. How much we could disregard some of these traditional niceties. And some of them aren't necessarily that valuable. We should be able to ask men out. But the idea of planning a date with a few days' notice and having some availability makes sense to me. And a lot of these sexual innuendos, honestly, for a woman, to me, they come across as rape culture. I don't want to meet someone who's pushing for sex. I think it's inappropriate. Leave it at that. And what I like about now, the rules talk about being somewhat withholding for your time. They're very traditional. Don't accept a Saturday night date if he doesn't ask later, if he asks later than a Tuesday. Uh, Never invite him into your home until you're certain. Be very careful how you behave. Don't speak too much. And some of that's off. But I thought the real theme of this, the really important part, is what the rules tell you is that if a guy wants to be with you, he will put in the effort. And to me, that makes a lot of sense. See what this person is offering when you are not. I used to belong to several Facebook groups for widows, and they made me so sad because in several of them, the widows would write, well, we met a guy, they'd met men, and the guy said all he wanted was friends with benefits, something real casual. And the widows were like, well, why? Why can't I have more? And they were putting so much effort in making themselves available, cooking wonderful meals, apparently having mind-blowing sex, but without an emotional context. And the guys had been honest. They'd said, this is all they're offering. But I think some of us, like me, were used to a world, where relationships and sex came with love. But what we didn't realize, and some of these folks on Facebook didn't realize, is you couldn't get that love. You had to accept what someone was telling you. If they have little to offer, that's what they're telling you. They have little to offer. If their idea of a date is, hey, maybe I'll stop by on my way home from a party or a game or something, well, that's not really much of an offer. It's like this friend I have that I'm not friends with anymore because he only talked to me when he was driving to see other people. It was like, yeah, we can chat. Here's where I'll be driving. And again, that's kind of not really much of a friendship. So I thought it was very important with the rules to get the idea to see what somebody else is offering. Pull back a little. You don't have to wait for a 5-day notice for a date, but you also don't have to accept leftovers or things that don't feel good to you. And the other part of the rules talked about not oversharing. Now, again, I think it's wonderful to be open. I wish we could all be. I'm a writer and I've been probably overly open in my work. But it's very painful to confess your beautiful secret self and your innermost thoughts to someone who then decides they're going to ghost you, or they're not that crazy about you. Or again, maybe you're number 3 on the list after the first date ended. Kind of that like that Sex in the City where Samantha goes out on an elegant date but then calls the guy at the bar. And so I think that was kind of important, the idea of holding back until you feel comfortable sharing with someone. Sharing your innermost secrets doesn't mean that someone's going to love you. I'm sorry, I wish it did. And the other thing the rules do, and again, this is how you get Mr. Right, is to hold off on sex. Now, again, this is archaic stuff. We should be able to have as much fun as we want, whenever we want. We're all grown-ups, assuming consent, of course. But again, that wasn't my world. After I became close to guys, I would find that they made themselves less available. They were more critical. Suddenly I should be paying for more. I should be changing more. Sure, they'd like to see me if I'd like to drive the 45 minutes to see them. And there was very little effort being offered yet again. But people aren't territories. You don't annex us. We can leave whenever we want. And that's what I like about the rules. It has the idea that you don't give of yourself until you feel a reciprocity and a generosity of spirit. Because to me, in the modern dating world, not only is chivalry dead, but so is basic courtesy, and we have every right to hold out for that. I do have a happy ending. I did meet a guy about 3.5 years ago who actually seemed like someone, who hadn't necessarily read the rules, but did go with old-fashioned manners in terms of picking me up, making sure I got home safe, not pushing for anything, and essentially living like a grown-up. But I never would have met him if I hadn't stopped settling for things I didn't want, for the more casual relationships, for the uncertainties, for putting up with folks who were honestly not that nice to me. So again, the best advice I can offer If you're not with someone that you're crazy about, stop settling. You have every right to find someone who you are crazy about and who treats you well. And sometimes you have to hold back and treat your soul, protect your soul, treat your heart with respect until you find somebody who treats you the way you deserve. I'm Debbie, and I hope this helped navigate the dread cesspool. Thank you so much. See you next time.
For more on Celebrating Act Two, visit our webpage, follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and tell your friends. Celebrating Act Two is the user manual for the second half of your life.